Tequila to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show. I want to talk about the 49ers schedule and ranking the toughest games that they have on the schedule and on the docket for the 2024 season. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this episode of 49ers Cutback. And it's something that I always enjoy doing, is going through the process of picking games. Now, this episode's not about picking the games of who I think would win, but I'm kind of taking you through the process of how I come to the understanding of if the 49ers have a really good chance. There's a lot of things that go into these games. Are the 49ers coming off good rest? Is it normal rest? Do they have a short rest? Are they playing a team that's had a bye week? Are you playing a team that's potentially come off a pretty easy game? And a lot of that is kind of hard to figure out because we just don't know who these teams are going to be when the season starts. We're talking about what it looks like on paper, but that doesn't stop the conversation from happening. You look at matchups, you look at teams and how they play each other, different head coaches, different personnel, and it gets way more difficult to figure out. But it's a lot of fun, and I like going through the process and figuring out who the 49ers could potentially beat during the season. So what I like to do is I like to go through and figure out which games I believe are going to be the toughest. It doesn't mean just because it's the toughest game that I believe the 49ers are going to lose it, but it does mean it comes down to different circumstances. And of course, all this is subjective, and that's something you understand when you're talking about, which games are going to be difficult. But I think you could look at circumstances, and that will dictate which games right now appear to be more difficult. Now, as we get through the season, a trip to Green Bay might not warrant as difficult a game if there's no bad weather. So there's a lot of things that play into this, but it's going to be a fun conversation. I hope you guys all will join me for this conversation. And the whole way through, let me know in the comment section down below what you think about these matchups, which ones are the toughest, which ones are the toughest games. And then, eventually down the road, I'm going to get into picking these games. But it's a lot of fun, and I want to know what you guys think. And if you guys already have picked these games, let me know what you think the 49ers record's going to be. I'm excited for that too. So like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. And I appreciate everyone that downloads my episodes. You guys truly are the best. And I've had a great run with Believe, and I've really been enjoying myself so far. And we're going to keep trying to build this thing up. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. And the 49ers have 17 matchups this season that cover 18 weeks of the season. Of course, week 9, they get a very nice bye, and week 9 has been good to the 49ers as far as bye weeks. 49ers love that. But when you're looking at your roster, and then you look at the rosters of the other teams, and then the circumstances of playing in certain cities at certain times, it gets a little fun. So we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to go through the games that aren't exactly the toughest, and we're going to work our way up to the toughest games for the San Francisco 49ers in the 2024 season. And of course, there's reasons for all of it. But week 17, or the 17th easiest game for me, or the easiest game for me on the schedule is going to be the Arizona Cardinals week 18. And the reason I say that is not so much that I think the Arizona Cardinals are a complete pushover or they're not going to be a tough out, but because of the circumstance of it being week 18 matchup. The fact that it's coming at the end of the season, the 49ers may not have much to invest into that football game. So it might not carry very much weight at all. Now, of course, depending on how the season goes, it could carry a lot more weight and this could move up the list. But last year, week 18 against the Los Angeles Rams, the San Francisco 49ers played Sam Darnold. They played most of their backups the entire game, and the Rams ended up winning the game. The 49ers invested with their backups, but were unwilling to invest a lot of time with their starters. So this game, if it's a game that means something, Brock Purdy will definitely be out there in front of his home fans, and he absolutely tore it up last season against Arizona. But I think this one may not be a must win for the 49ers. And if it's not, it just doesn't carry as much value, which means it can't be that tough. So I have that as my number 17th game as far as it is the weakest or the not the toughest game that's going to come up. When it comes to the 16th toughest game, it's going to be the New England Patriots in week 4. New England is having a ton of changes. And we don't know who's going to be quarterback. It could be veteran Jacoby Brissett. It could also be rookie Drake May. And I think that's something interesting is who's going to play quarterback. They still have talented players. They still have weapons. You talk Juju Smith-Schuster, don't know exactly how he's doing health-wise. They have Kendrick Bourne, so he'll be returning to San Francisco, so we'll get to see some dancing. Hopefully all of his dancing stays in the pregame, and that's about it. We don't want him dancing on the field. We want the 49ers to absolutely clamp him down. But I think New England has got a lot of work to do this season. I'm not sure that they're going to be where they want to be, especially at week 4. Coming to San Francisco, that's a long trip. I think the 49ers, this is going to be a game they're going to be looking forward to, and they're going to be ready to pounce on the New England Patriots. So I just don't think that one is very tough. New England early in the season, week 4, I don't think Drake Bay is going to be where he's supposed to be. I probably think it'll be Jacoby Brissett, and he's more of a statue now at this point in his career. I think the 49ers could get after him and make some plays. So that is definitely a game the 49ers feel like they should be able to win. Then the 15th toughest game is going to be the Arizona Cardinals in week 5. I have Arizona in 2 games towards the bottom, but this one is definitely a lot more tough because it's coming right ahead of a Thursday night matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. So the 49ers know they've got a quick turnaround, and sometimes that can get in your head. You've got to focus on game after game after game and keep it as a one-game season. But every once in a while, it creeps into your head, hey, we got Seattle coming up on a short week, and you start looking ahead. Potentially, the 49ers could look ahead past the Arizona Cardinals. Plus, the Cardinals, this is their first road game after a 3-game homestand, so they are going to be pretty rested as far as travel goes, and it's not a big travel to go to San Francisco. So this one, I think there's a case for this one to be considered tough, but I felt like it was still down in my bottom 3 as one of the, not one of the toughest games that were going to be on the 49ers schedule this season. I do think Arizona is going to get better as the year goes. This one earlier, but for whatever reason, Arizona in San Francisco is a different type of matchup than the 49ers in Arizona. I can't explain exactly why, and they're still building their roster there, but it's going to be interesting. I want to see how Marvin Harrison Jr. does against Charvarius Ward, Yammer Lenore. That's going to be an absolute blast to watch. Okay, the 14th toughest is going to be the Chicago Bears in Week 14. Here comes Caleb Williams, leading all the offensive weapons that they've been able to get him, including DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. They've got Roma Dunze, who they drafted, DeAndre Swift, who they picked up in free agency. Lots of talent, and they're going to be coming off a mini bye because they play the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving Day. So you've got a young quarterback. He should be far enough into the season where he's got a pretty good grip on what defenses are trying to do to him as far as a scheme, and then he'll be a little bit more used to the speed, a little bit more used to the NFL game. That could make Caleb Williams a little bit more difficult to deal with at the end of the year. Then he's got enough talent around him to make some plays on offense and more rest and time where they can get prepared for the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the only thing the 49ers got as far as their help is they're going to be playing the Chicago Bears at home. So Chicago travels to Santa Clara to take on the 49ers. But this is going to be a fun one. Caleb Williams, the excitement around the number 1 pick, that's going to be a lot of fun for fans to watch. And let's see if the 49ers can get after him when he starts running around. It used to be a real problem for the 49ers when it came to mobile quarterbacks. feel like they've gotten better when it comes to mobile quarterbacks, being able to corral them for the most part. Occasionally, you will get a circumstance where the 49ers didn't do a very good job game planning for a more mobile quarterback, and then that can kind of make them struggle a little bit. Carson Wentz in week 18 last year, I was at that game. He actually made the 49ers pay with his legs pretty consistently. So 49ers will have to make sure they do a good job of trying to keep Caleb Williams in the pocket, but they've gotten better at this through the years. Just look at what they did to Hurts and some of the other guys. They've been able to corral them and keep them in the pocket. But that's going to be an absolutely fun game. The weapons, Caleb Williams. I'm actually really looking forward to week 14 matchup. The 13th toughest game is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 10. And the Buccaneers won the division last year. Baker Mayfield did enough to earn a really big contract, and that's fantastic. They've got weapons. It's not like they're devoid of talent. They're probably one of the best teams, if not the best team in the South. And so they've got the ability. Here's the issue, though. 49ers are coming off a bye. And last year when the 49ers came off a bye, they also traveled to Florida. That time they were playing Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. This time they're playing Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Bucks. But it's an early start time, which normally you would count in the negative for the 49ers, except for the fact the Niners are coming off a bye week, which means it doesn't really matter. They can adjust to this easily. They'll do early practices that week to get their bodies used to going out there and competing that early. But when you get used to training anyways, most of the time these players get it done. So I think this one's a tough game because Tampa Bay's pretty good. But if you told me that, that you wanted this game as an easier game, you felt this one wasn't that tough, I could come to grips with that, because I think this one, you think the 49ers really are going to be able to get after Baker Mayfield and be able to cause some problems. But Tampa Bay did win a playoff game last year, so I'm taking that into account. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 13th toughest game of the season. Number 12 is the week 1 matchup versus the New York Jets. And I put it there because Aaron Rodgers struggles against San Francisco. I know he's had some regular season wins, but when it comes to big time matchups, especially in the playoffs, he struggles. And I think in week 1, the 49ers are going to be pretty healthy. That's maybe the healthiest they'll be during the entire season is week 1, as long as they get out of training camp and the preseason unscathed. So you're going to get a healthy 49ers, and the 49ers are going to be looking to make a statement following a Super Bowl loss. And they're going to want to get out there and they're going to execute and get back to football and forget what happened last year. So I think matchup-wise, the 49ers match up very well with the New York Jets. I think there's going to be some fun, cool conversations about Sauce Gardner versus Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. Charvarius Ward had some not-so-nice comments for Sauce Gardner after he made negative comments about the 49ers last season. So he'll be on notice and going against the New York Jets wide receivers. And the Jets, Robert Saleh, he's on the hot seat, so he's going to be trying to get something done. But they have been underperforming for the last couple years. And I know last year they would have done a lot better with Aaron Rodgers if he wouldn't have gotten hurt. And that's always a problem when it comes to the season, is you just don't know who's going to get hurt. So I think the Jets are going to be pretty good this season. I think they're going to play a lot better. They'll probably, be in contention for that division. But I think that in this case, the 49ers are going to overwhelm them on Monday Night Football. I think the 49ers are going to get the win. Aaron Rodgers, I don't think, is going to win at San Francisco. And I think Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers are going to click on all cylinders in this game. But, we're starting to get to the tough matchups. I mean, now when you get to these games, there's no easy ones. And I don't even think the ones we talked about before that were easy. They're all tough games. But for circumstance-wise, this is where you put the Jets. So the number 11 game is the Miami Dolphins. That's in week 16. 49ers have to go cross-country to Miami. It's the weekend before Christmas. I don't think that plays a huge part in it. But just looking at a trip to Florida is never easy going across the coast. But then you go to Mike McDaniel, a familiar face that you're going to be playing. So he's going to have some semblance of understanding of what you do on offense. And then they've got speed on speed on speed. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert. Then they drafted more speed as well to go with their guys. They have more wide receivers, more running backs. They are just built that way. And then you look at defense, and it's all about speed, speed, speed as well. So that's the one weakness I think that Miami really is going to be dealing with is the defense. As the changing coordinator again, Vic Fangio was only there for 1 year, so they've got some adjustments. They've got some figuring out to do as far as that pass rush, that secondary. They're trying to revitalize it. Where will Jalen Phillips be? Should be healthy by then. I don't know what's going to happen with Chubb. Will he be back? There's going to be some conversation about how good this defense is, and that could ultimately be the downfall of the Dolphins and why they're a little lower. Plus, the Dolphins have tailed off every single season since Mike McDaniel's been there. Over the last 2 years, they start hot. They're absolutely explosive. And then as you get further into the season, they just begin to fall away. They begin to struggle. They limp into the playoffs. They ultimately end up losing in round one. So that is the 11th toughest game on the 49ers schedule, in my opinion. Plus, I forgot to mention, they're playing the Houston Texans the week before. They're traveling to Houston. That's going to be a tough matchup as well. Number 10 matchup, that's the toughest, is the Seattle Seahawks in week 11 in Santa Clara at home versus the 49ers. It'll be the second game where the Seattle Seahawks get to play the 49ers, and it'll be the second game for Coach McDonald to be able to figure out how to stop the 49ers offense, because even though he had a good plan when he was with Baltimore last year, you have different personnel this season. You have to get close to your personnel to be able to figure out what they can handle, and then you can start detailing assignments and how they match up against certain teams. So there's going to be a filling out process early in the season, I expect. But by the time you get to the second time you're playing someone and you have film from that first contest, and you see how they attacked you, how they adjusted to what you do, you could start making those adjustments as well. And so that'll be a lot of fun to watch. Plus, the Seahawks are coming off their bye week. So that's always tough. You got the Seahawks coming off the bye week. 49ers are in Tampa Bay in week 10 and then heading back. The only good thing is the 49ers had a bye week before. Then they went to Tampa Bay, but still going across coast, coming back, playing a team that's been on a bye week that can prepare for you for 2 weeks. That's tough. But because the 49ers have absolutely handled Geno Smith over the last couple years, and Brock Purdy's 4-0 against Seattle, I still kept this game at number 10, even though you could easily argue this is going to be a tougher game with Seattle coming off the bye. But with Geno being quarterback, I still think the 49ers have a distinct advantage. The number 9 toughest game of the season, the Los Angeles Rams in week 3. 49ers will just have been in Minnesota, and so they'll be traveling back and then traveling to LA. And it's not a long travel from Santa Clara to Los Angeles, but the Rams also play the 49ers tough. And we know the 49ers have been winning game after game against the Rams. Week 18, of course, last year they played their backups. Both teams really did. But this is always a tough one, and it's going to be your first divisional matchup of the year. 49ers know how important it is, and the Rams are young. They're fast. They're going to be flying around. You're probably going to have a healthy Matthew Stafford to go with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. They've got a very talented roster, so that one's going to be fun. I think that one, with the 49ers coming back from Minnesota, could be a little bit tougher early on in the year, but that was my number 9 toughest game of the season. Number 8, so we're in that top 8 now, at the Seattle Seahawks, week 6, Thursday night football. It's a short week, and anytime it's a short week, you start taking into consideration how tough it is to play with no recovery time. And so with the 49ers not having any recovery time, and I know Seattle doesn't either, you just take into account that's tougher. 49ers travel normally. Teams that travel on Thursday for Thursday night football games don't do as well. 49ers have done well on short weeks against Seattle, but I still think that's a tough turnaround. So 49ers, against Seattle Seahawks is a tough one. That'll be their first look at what McDonald does to them with his new unit. So it could be early filling out, figuring out what he's trying to do. Maybe it'll work in the positive where he doesn't figure it out early, or they'll have the 49ers figure it out, and it'll be a tough game offensively early on until Kyle Shanahan's able to adjust. So this one is a lot more up in the air because we don't know what McDonald's going to do with that team. You knew what Pete Carroll was going to do, what his offense and defense were going to look like every year. This year it's going to be a little bit different. The good news, the 49ers will have 5 films on them, and that is plenty to be able to get the concepts that they want to run. So they'll be prepared, but you don't have a lot of time to be able to game plan. And Kyle Shanahan says there's not a lot of game plan that goes into it. So it should be interesting with that Week 6 matchup on Thursday Night Football. The 7th toughest matchup is the Dallas Cowboys Week 8 Sunday Night Football. And it starts with, and I know a lot of people will say, well, the 49ers have had Dallas's number, and that is entirely accurate, and no one can argue that point. But the Cowboys are going to be coming off a bye. So they're going to be at home resting, watching the 49ers play the Kansas City Chiefs. And so I think that alone gives the Cowboys a little bit of an advantage that could even this game out a little bit. I still put the 49ers' dominance and the way that they've been able to handle the Dallas Cowboys into account when talking about how tough this game was going to be. But I can't forget that last year when Dallas came to San Francisco, the 49ers absolutely rolled them, wrecked them in every single aspect of the game. So Cowboys are going to have to figure it out. They're going to have to be a lot better. And I didn't think that during the season they proved to be a better team than the team that we saw the 49ers absolutely roll. And when the 49ers have gotten one of those teams in primetime, they've dominated. Ask Dallas, ask Philadelphia. 49ers in primetime are a different animal. So it's going to be interesting. Dallas Cowboys get a little bit of a nod their way with the bye week, especially with the 49ers playing Kansas City. But is that going to be enough to be able to knock off San Francisco? I still think it's tough, but the fact that Dallas has been a consistent playoff team over the last few years makes this a tough game. The number 6 toughest game of the season, Week 17 versus the Detroit Lions on Monday night. And the Detroit Lions are a very talented football team, and they've just re-upped everyone. Big-time money for their number 1 wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, their right tackle, Penei Sewell, and now Jared Goff, the quarterback, making $53 million a year. So they are definitely paying big time when it comes to money. But they also went out and they got guys in the draft that are going to help their football team and drafted cornerbacks that are going to help their football team, including Terrion Arnold, which was a great selection in this draft. So I think the San Francisco 49ers, and the Detroit Lions is going to be a fantastic game. The fact that it's the last Monday Night Football game before the end of the year, 49ers are going to, be out there trying to win this game, because this game right here could determine the significance of Week 18. 49ers winning, they could win the conference and secure home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And we know Detroit wants the same thing. They had to travel to San Francisco. That could have been the difference last year. 49ers second half absolutely rolled Detroit. A tale of two halves last season. So Detroit was close. They've made improvements. And so this is going to be a fun one. I think Detroit is a legitimate threat to the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC. They really are. So that is going to be must-see television in Week 17, your 6th toughest game of the season. Number 5 is going to be the Los Angeles Rams at home in Week 15. And the reason is it's a short week, the Thursday Night Football game, and you're talking Week 15. You're playing the Bears the week before, so that's not a big deal, but you're turning around and going quick into it. And the reason that I'm taking that into account, you're probably going to be pretty tired after what you just went through. A Green Bay game, that's tough. Then you go back to Buffalo for a Sunday night game. Then you play Chicago at home. You're probably pretty tired when you're ready to go for that Thursday night matchup versus Los Angeles Rams. Now, they are coming to you. That helps. But the fact you're playing 2 divisional rivals on Thursday Night Football, you have to make sure that you are capable and prepared. And I worry that this one could be really tough for the 49ers. McVay being able to game plan, figure things out, and you just don't know how much steam the 49ers are going to have left at that point. So I think that anytime you play this game, and the Rams could be playing this one to hold on to their hope of winning the division or hold on to their hope of winning the playoffs. And this could be the 49ers trying to win the division outright, as this is, not the last divisional game, but the last one versus the Hawks or Rams. So if the 49ers are, 5-0 after this game against the Rams, they've won the division. So It could be a huge game with playoff implications, and we know the 49ers and Rams always have some pretty good matchups. The fourth toughest game, this might raise a lot of people's eyebrows, and you're probably wondering why it hasn't been coming up yet, is at Minnesota in week 2. And why is this one at Minnesota at week 2? Well, there's a couple of reasons. I'll start with this one. First, the 49ers will be on short rest because in week 1, they play Monday night. Then they've got to travel to Minnesota to play a 10 a.m. start time, which is notorious for giving NFL football teams struggles, especially coast teams traveling to the other coast when it comes to West Coast to East Coast. 49ers have been better at that than most teams since Jim Harbaugh came, actually. They figured something out there, and they've been really good. Here's the other reason that I have this as one of the toughest. It was expected last year for the 49ers to roll into Minnesota and get a win, but they didn't. And for whatever reason, the 49ers struggled to play in Minnesota against the Vikings. The San Francisco 49ers have not won in Minnesota since 1992. So until the 49ers roll in there and are able to get the win, I think this is going to be a tough game on a short week. Now, there's a lot of reasons to point to why the 49ers should and could win this football game. Number one, they're probably going to be going against either Sam Darnold, who was a 49ers reclamation project last year, or J.J. McCarthy, the rookie. They have also lost some talent along the defensive line. So the 49ers should be able to go in there and win. But not winning a game someplace in over 30 years, it definitely makes you think about, hey, there's some sort of voodoo going on here. So the 49ers have to go get it done. They have to beat Minnesota at a short week. Not a game won there since 1992. That's my fourth toughest game on the San Francisco 49ers schedule. The third toughest game is the 49ers versus the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field on November 24th. What is the weather going to look like? Is it going to be snowing? It's going to be right before Thanksgiving. This one, I think, is going to be a fantastic game. 49ers taking on Jordan Love and that Green Bay Packers team after that great playoff game last year in the divisional round. 49ers get it done thanks to Drake Greenlaw's 2 interceptions. But that game could have went either way for a long time. It was a fun one to watch. 49ers had enough moxie. They had enough in the tank to go ahead and get that one done. But this matchup in November is going to be huge. 49ers, of course, this could have playoff implications as far as seeding. But 49ers just want to make sure Green Bay knows you can't beat us. It's important to win those games and keep teams that are trying to come up from thinking they have a chance to beat you. And if they get a mental chance to overcome something, a question about being able to beat you and beat you in the regular season, that could help them when it comes to playoffs. So this is going to be a fun one. Green Bay, so many good wide receivers. Then they drafted really well when it came to tight ends a couple years ago as well. They've got a lot of young players. Change in the running back room, but still, Jacobs a great running back. They're going to be able to run the football. You expect Jordan Love to be even better. And we'll see what their defense looks like during the season. I think that's one of the biggest questions. What will the Joe Barry-less defense look like? They made some changes there, added in Vic Fangio. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when it comes to this football team. So very cool to watch this game, Week 12, Packers. Will the weather elements play a big role into it, or will there be no weather concerns? It's going to be interesting, but it's going to be a fantastic matchup. Week 2, second toughest game, Week 7, Kansas City Chiefs. 49ers just haven't been able to beat Kansas City. They have not won against the Kansas City Chiefs since 2014, Jim Harbaugh's last season in San Francisco. And the 49ers got to get over this hump. They've got to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. But here comes Patrick Mahomes. Here comes Travis Kelce to San Francisco. Just 2 years ago, the same exact thing happened, and the same exact time of the year, middle of October. This time it's October 20th. And the 49ers at that point had just added Christian McCaffrey, and Kansas City came in, and they ended up blowing the 49ers out in the second half. So San Francisco, this is going to be a big game mentally to be able to overcome the Chiefs, a rematch of last year's Super Bowl. And I don't think that plays as much into it as it does. Steve Young had talked about this a long time. In 1994, they needed to beat the Dallas Cowboys just to prove that they could do it. And I think the 49ers need to prove that they can beat the Chiefs. And this is a perfect opportunity to do so at home on a Sunday. No Taylor Swift in the crowd. That's right. No Taylor Swift. It's one of the 3 games that she's not going to be at. So no cuts to Taylor Swift. She's going to be in Miami doing a concert. It's going to be all about the Chiefs versus 49ers. And I know the 49ers want to get this win. They want to prove that they can get it done. And the Chiefs want to keep the 49ers from thinking they can beat them. That mental block is huge and a huge advantage. You just can't beat a team. It starts to get in your psyche. So this is going to be a big game. The matchups are just all over the place. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm truly looking forward to this one. This one's going to be exciting. Brock Purdy versus Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid versus Kyle Shanahan, George Kittle versus Travis Kelce. And I know they don't play each other like head to head, but yeah, it's just a lot of fun. It's going to be a great one. And the number one toughest game on the 49ers schedule this season is going to be the Buffalo Bills. Playing at Buffalo December 1st, the week after you play the Green Bay Packers. And what makes it really tough is Thanksgiving is in between. So the 49ers are going to play in Green Bay. I'm sure they're going to fly home and they're going to enjoy practices and then Thanksgiving. Get back to it on Friday for practice and then fly out to Buffalo for the Buffalo Bills game. It's a Sunday night game. There's going to be a lot of eyes on it. Josh Allen, a former 49ers fan, so he's going to want to play really good. And the last time he did play the 49ers, he absolutely smoked them with over 370 yards passing the football. Plus, the Bills are going to be coming off a bye. 49ers will have been traveling from the East Coast to the West Coast, back to the East Coast. So that is a tough one. 2 consecutive weeks traveling to the East Coast while the Buffalo Bills are chilling, watching you play the Green Bay Packers, enjoying Thanksgiving, and getting ready for what happens when you come in Thanksgiving weekend. So that's the toughest game, in my opinion, in the entire schedule. It's just not going to be that easy. So it's a good schedule for the 49ers. It really is. I think it worked out. 49ers have a lot of games that they believe they can win, I'm sure. And the travel works out a lot better. There was not the tough stretch last year. The 49ers had the stretch of birds, right? They had the bird hunt that went on. It was 5 straight games, and they were tough football games. 49ers don't have that. It's more stretches of 3 games at a time that are really tough. Now, you have to win the games that you're supposed to win. This doesn't matter. And the truth is, what we're talking about right now, 17-1, it's going to fluctuate a little bit. Some teams are going to show up and be better than they are. Some teams are going to show up and not be as good. Also, weather circumstances could work out in your favor. All of a sudden, it's really nice when you go to Green Bay, and it's 50 degrees. It's a balmy 50 degrees, and it feels really nice. Who knows? So here's the list. It's going to be easiest to toughest according to the schedule. It was 17 Arizona, 16 New England, 15 Arizona again. This one at the 49ers home in Arizona. I'm sorry. They do have a home in Arizona after COVID, but at home in Santa Clara. 14 versus the Chicago Bears. Number 13 at Tampa Bay, Week 10. Number 12 versus the New York Jets, Week 1 on Monday Night Football. Number 11 at Miami, Week 16. Number 10 at home versus the Seattle Seahawks in Week 11. Number 9 at Los Angeles Rams, Week 3. Number 8 at Seattle Seahawks, Week 6, Thursday Night Football matchup. Number 7 against the Dallas Cowboys, Week 8 on Sunday Night Football. Dallas coming off a bye. Week 6 versus the Detroit Lions. Game 6, Week 17 against the Detroit Lions on Monday Night Football. Number 5, Los Angeles Rams, Week 15. That's a short week, Thursday Night Football. Number 4, at the Vikings, Week 2. Early game, short week because of the Monday Night Football matchup. And then the top 3 are going to be absolutely fantastic. At Green Bay, Week 12. November 24th, that's going to be a great game, a rematch of the divisional round last year in the playoffs. Number 2 is Week 7 versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs are coming off a bye, and the 49ers haven't beat the Chiefs since 2014, so that's going to be interesting. And the number 1 toughest game, again, at Buffalo, Week 13. Bills coming off a bye, second consecutive week traveling to the East Coast. Whew, that's going to be a good one. I'm excited for this schedule. I'm excited for the game. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Also, if you have your record that you think the 49ers are going to have, put it in the comment section down below. I'm going to get to that episode as I continue to do research But yeah, it's a lot of fun to talk about the 49ers schedule and where they're headed. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe. Please give it a 5-star rating. And just like always, this episode brought to you by Bet Online, where the game starts. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Until then, stay safe. And remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.